Has a ghost ever broken your fan? One definitely broke mine. And it wasn't just any ghost, it was the spirit of my late father-in-law, Mike. Hello, my name is Jenna, and I have decided to continue to tell you more about some of my spiritual experiences as a psychic medium in hopes of encouraging you to connect with your guides, your ancestors, but also to start to break up the stigma that our only experience with spirits has to be one of haunting. That the only way to have a spiritual experience, to collaborate with a spirit, is to go and poke and prod at some sort of malevolent one in a place where horrors happened. I don't agree with that at all. So, in the spirit of trying to open up another way, I've got some stories and I'm here to tell you them. And hopefully, like I said, it will connect you with some of your own spirits, guides, ancestors, however it works. So let's talk about Mike. I never actually met Mike. He passed about 25-ish years ago, 20 years ago, when my husband was young, a young adult. He was only like 20 years old when it happened. And Mike has always been a pretty active spirit. To tell you the truth, my husband's ancestors in general are incredibly active. And when they show up hard. I've got another story about his aunt, Barb, who showed up at my bedside one night. And it's one of the clearest apparitions I've ever experienced. But I'm going to save that one for another episode, like what went down with that, because it was interesting. But Mike and his family in general, again, very active. Mike, shortly after he passed, my spoke to my husband, like he just said my husband's name, Tom, audibly. It wasn't kind of the in your mind, it was an actual like spiritual emission where he was reaching out to my husband, and he's reached out to my husband several times since he passed via dreams, via just a sense that he was there. And before I tell you about Mike breaking the fan in my house, in this very room, actually, is where Mike broke the fan. Um, I want to just say that I need to give my husband some credit because he is part of the reason that I opened to my spiritual gifts. And the lesson for you is to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with a partner, with friends, with a community that supports what you want to grow into. And at the time, I didn't even know that I wanted to grow into spirituality, but my husband has always been more open to spirits. He's always been more communicative with them. And when I first met him, I wasn't so open. And part of the reason is when I met him, I was very much in a defiance of all spirituality and religion because I was fresh off the cuff of finally abandoning Christianity and the damage that it had done to me. And so I was in a space where I just didn't really want to open to anything. I just wanted to live my life and I kind of cut myself off from any kind of spirituality, but that's what I needed to do. And so just know if you're in a space where a particular religion has done some harm to you, it's okay if you need to just go into a cocoon a little bit to protect yourself. You don't have to stay there forever. When the time is right, you can open to the path that was meant for you, to the spiritual path that was meant for you, because that's exactly what happened to me. I had to spend a couple years just kind of cocooned. And when I was ready, I really came into it. But part of the reason is just because my husband was open to it. He could talk about it. And it kind of began, with reading his book, Think Like a Monk. He's by Jay Shetty. He's the one that brought that book into my life. And again, didn't want to read it right away, but one fine day when I was throwing up and home from work, I needed something to put my mind on other than how painful my stomach was. So I opened it, and that introduced me to a different side of spirituality. And then from there on out, I went and saw a psychic for the first time who told me I was psychic, and then that and connected me with my late grandmother. And doors just kept opening and opening and opening when I was ready. But part of the reason is because I'm sharing my life with someone who supports it. I can't emphasize enough that part of the reason why I've grown into such a powerful mystic is because I had the right person with me. the right person to talk about it with. Because if you're like me and talking is a huge part of how you connect, you have to make sure you're with the right people, because connecting through conversation is huge to my growth. I need to do it. That's why I love talking to you so much. So make sure you're with the right people. And even if you're not talkative like me, you still have a way that you connect, right? And a good way actually to see how you connect is to look at where your Venus placement is in your astrology chart. So again, download the Chani app and look for the planet Venus. And she'll often lay it out, like just with words too. So if you don't recognize the symbols of the planets in an astrological chart, she'll put on the side like Venus in. And so the sign and house that your Venus are in will tell you kind of how you connect. It will, show you. It's a good example because Venus is the planet of values and, beauty. It's how we relate to the world and the people, the spirits around us. And so that'll give you a clue to help clue you in. My Venus right on top of my Mercury. Like they literally share the same degree, which is 24 degrees, and they both chose to be retrograde at the same time. So Venus and Mercury were both in a retrograde state when I was born at the same degree in the sign of Gemini in the eighth house. And so I'm kind of primed astrologically to speak on spiritual matters because both my planet of values, the messenger planet, are in Gemini, the sign that loves to distribute information. And they're retrograde, right? Meaning they were kind of under review or speaking internally, which also kind of points to speaking, to the other side. Sometimes, at least this is what an astrologer who I worked with told me, that having both Venus and Mercury retrograde at the same degree in the same sign means that I likely can converse with spirits very well. So, and that's where the eighth house piece comes in. So anyway, if you want a quick guide to understanding how you connect, check out your Venus placement in the Chani app. So back to the spirits though. Again, my husband is a huge part of how I've kind of grown into this role because I could talk about it with him and live out my gifts with him. And that's part of how I grew too, is that I could just be. It wasn't just a matter of talking about it, it was being my gifts in front of him. So one evening, this was probably about 2 years ago ish. I think it was in the fall. I was out in my living room and reading or something, and my husband was in this room putting his laundry away. And all of a sudden I heard, can't really make the sound of shattering glass, but that was supposed to be glass shattering. And I heard him go, "Whoa, honey, come here." And I ran to our room because it was very loud shattering glass. And he said, "This glass just missed me by this much." And my husband had been folding laundry on the bed, and and our fan is like right above our bed. And so just as he turned to put something away, the glass shattered like right where he had been standing on the floor at the foot of the bed. And it was the glass that, goes over like a fan light, right? And there were no loose screws. Our fan showed no signs of, breaking. This was very odd, very out of the blue, and it happened in the evening time. Okay. So this is what I mean about like a lot of times spiritual activity doesn't have to be in the dead of night. A lot of my experiences have happened during the day. And I instantly sensed that Mike was here and Mike had done it. It was like there was it was like a 0 to 100 moment. As soon as I walked in this room and he told me what happened with the fan, I instantly knew that Mike was here and he wanted to talk to him. And it was just my gift sort of being activated. I was like, "Oh, he's here." And then he's here. He wants to talk to you. And this is kind of the one and only time that I've ever sort of taken on the characteristics of somebody who I was mediumistically channeling. It doesn't happen very often that I start kind of talking and acting, but I'm doing this with my shoulders because this was very Mike-ish. He was very like good old boy, hey, kind of guy, And so My husband had to go put something away in another room. I was like, hurry up, come on, come on, he needs to talk to you. And by the way, I gave my consent for this, okay? So like no spirit who I've ever channeled has ever done so without my permission. I gave my sort of subconscious, yes, I will deliver this message for you. So again, if you ever feel like anything is being done against your will, that's not a good spirit that you're working with. But I gave Mike my permission to do this. And so I'm like, okay, he wants to talk to you. And again, my shoulders kept hunching, and Tom was saying, you look like my dad right now. You sound like my dad. And I was kind of pacing around, waiting for him, kind of, just hunched. And I won't go too into details about the message itself because it was meant for my husband, but the general topic was like time was running out and he needed to speak to Tom, his son, about something related to his life's purpose, meaning who he was meant to be, a goal he was meant to have, and the importance of it for his identity, for his growth, for just living a meaningful life. And the reason it was so dramatic is because um, my husband's family in life and death are characters. They all have very exuberant personalities. So of course, on the other side, they're going to show up exuberantly. And Mike gave him the message and then kind of moved on. And this is the important part of the why, right? When a spirit shows up, it's not just for the drama of the shattered glass. It's not just for the drama of me kind of acting like him. It's because he had a message, and that's the most important thing. He had an energy that he wanted to pass to my husband. He had something he needed to say. And it wasn't just meant to be a one and done situation. It was meant to set my husband on his path. It was meant to give him support from the other side on his path. And this is what Laura Lynn Jackson's work will really help you with. In fact, it helped me actually recommending her to you because when I recommended her and went to go link her website in the last episode, I saw that she has a new book out. And, because I'm me, I already got it. It's called Guided for those of you who are not watching the video. And it just came out and I'm absolutely loving it. I'm only on page like 80, but it's very Laura Lynn Jackson-y. Like she tells stories of people who she's encountered who've had these supernatural experiences with their loved ones who've passed, or just their guides, right? Their sort of guardian angels, their team of light, as Laura Lynn Jackson calls them. But she also is addressing some of the disbelief around spiritual experiences, kind of how the polarity of science versus spiritual and how certain things aren't possible if they're not physical. So what's cool is that she actually is referencing a lot of intellectuals and even scientists who are doing the work of trying to prove the spiritual. They shouldn't have to, but because of the world we live in, that's just kind of where we are. And they're kind of using some of these scientific avenues as a way to reach people who maybe otherwise wouldn't be open to it. So like I said, I'm 80 pages in and I'm loving it. So she's a really great resource if you're looking to just open, if you're looking to open and connect better with both your spirit guides or those who you've lost. And I want to wrap up this episode with just talking about how when our family passes, right, when they cross over, when they die, it doesn't mean our relationship with them ends. Okay. And of course, there's grief. Of course, their physical form is what we need. I don't want to diminish that. But as a matter of encouragement, I have to tell you from direct experience, both my own experience with my ancestors who've passed, but also my husband's and also those I've read about in Laura's books. People who have crossed, who have died, sometimes can develop a more powerful relationship with us on the other side, right? Some of us have complicated relationships with our family or friends who've died or who we've lost. And maybe things didn't end on the best of terms, or maybe there were some barriers to closeness when they were alive. But I can tell you, When people are on the other side and they're seeing through their spirit, they can reflect on their life, they can reflect on their relationship with you, and they can be there for you in a way from the other side that they never were here on earth. I can tell you directly that my grandmothers on both my mother and father's side have been some of the most active spirits in my life. My grandmother on my mother's side is kind of the one who started it all. She was the very first spirit who appeared during a psychic session, who came through during when I was seeing a psychic medium. And I never could have had the relationship I have with her now. I never could have had that when she was here because there were some barriers to connecting spiritually, developmentally that aren't there now. From the other side, she's come to me in dreams. She has said powerful lines to me in dreams that have changed my life. And this is why the spiritual is so real. These things that happen to me in my dreams, they are very much connected to my waking life. And when my grandmother appeared to me in a dream once, she said, "I'm sorry it's so cold in here." And that one sentence, "I'm sorry it's so cold in here," changed my life. And this only happened a few months ago. And she was referring to kind of this culture of judgment and shame that was created due to the religion that she kind of passed down her line. It sort of encouraged this self-blaming, self-shaming. If I don't fit into the structure appropriately, then there's something wrong with me. And I've carried that with me my whole life, especially because I am a rule follower. Believe it or not, I'm a huge rebel, but I'm also a huge rule follower. When I go to the Y, I always follow the pool rules because I don't handle it well when 17-year-old lifeguards start blowing their whistle at me and my toddler. Okay. So I am kind of a rule follower. And so when I still followed Christianity, I really felt a lot of shame. And so when she said, "I'm sorry it's so cold in here," she was referring to some of the things she had passed down, but some of the things that I still carried with me, the way that I viewed myself through the lens of shame. And by in here, she meant in my mind, in my spirit. "I'm sorry it's so cold," isolating. And just by her saying that, she freed me from it that much more because she was acknowledging that it was wrong, that a shame-based culture is wrong. And she was extending her empathy, meaning she was feeling it with me. She was feeling the coldness and isolation that shame and self-blame create. And so when you connect with your loved ones who've passed, I just want to encourage you that your relationship with them can change. And I have some family members who had some complicated relationships with some of the people who've passed. And from my experience, some of those people who've passed are looking to change things, even though it's hard, right? That's why we always, when we're on this side of the veil, want to deal with our shit so we can be there for those we love. So there's absolute value to spiritual relationships. And I encourage you to connect with your lost loved ones if you can, and know that the relationship can change in some ways, even if things couldn't get figured out here on earth, which again, I always encourage you while you're still alive to deal with your own shit so that you can be there for those you love. Even though if it is the case where someone passed on before things could, resolve or connect, our relationship with them can change. They can be there for you in ways they couldn't have otherwise. In some ways, my husband's father, Mike, can support his dreams from the other side in a way that he maybe wasn't able to when he was here. And he's very adamant that he wants to. That's been my experience with spirits, is sometimes when they know that they didn't quite support us the way that we needed to fully, they really want to from the other side, and they're really working on our behalf from the other side. So that's my story of Mike breaking the fan. And for your benefit, and actually we've never fixed it. It's kind of like in honor of Mike, we've just had open bulbs, in our fan. We've never gotten replacement glass. And it's kind of just to honor Mike. It's kind of just to be like, he was here, he did this. I think of him every time I look at the broken fan. So as this episode thumbnail icon, whatever, I'll put a picture of the broken fan, the missing glass, because why not honor Mike? So I can't encourage you enough to maybe check out some of Laura Lynn Jackson's work. Thank you for listening to this episode. Here and there, I'm going to continue to share more details about my spiritual encounters, because remember, the ultimate message is the why, right? Why are spirits interacting with us? And Mike wasn't just breaking the glass to make a scene, although he did succeed at that. He was breaking the glass because he really needed to get my husband's attention, and he really wanted to help him with his life's purpose. So always ask yourself why, and know that you might not get the answer immediately. Spiritual lessons take time. We'll get some of it right away, but they're also meant to put us on a journey. And I can tell you that from direct experience too. Every spiritual experience I've had has been a journey, but it's been one of a more fulfilling life, not one where I'm just constantly waiting for answers. I've lived a life of fulfillment because I've opened to this journey, because I'm living authentically and honestly, and I'm more open to the messages of the spirit world. I'm living more connected than I ever have been before. And I've wanted to connect other people more than I ever have before. So just know that not getting the answers right away, I know it contradicts how many of us in the US were raised, right? We were raised in our schools to have an immediate correct answer. And that's just not how life works. That's not how the spirit works. The spirit is meant to put us on a path. And on that path, we will live a fulfilled life. It does not mean we will live an easy life. In fact, it means the opposite. It means we will live a life of growth, but also a life of joy, of power, of authenticity, of truth. And so it's not easy, but it will be fulfilling. It will be fun. It will be exciting. It will be real. And it will be more connected than ever before. And I think we can agree that we need to connect in better ways more than ever before, ways outside of discriminating or othering people. We need to connect again as divine beings here on earth, and spirits are a crucial part of that. Please share this episode and or others if you think that they would help people. But as always, thanks for coming.